Well, police continue to investigate the motive of a gunman who killed 10 people and wounded 10 more at a California dance studio during Lunar New Year celebrations. CTV News Washington correspondent Richard Madden joining us live this morning from Monterey Park. Richard, appreciate that you're here this morning up so early here for us. The 72-year-old suspect has died, but at this point, have police said anything or given any hints on a motive?
Yeah, excuse me, that is a big question. Good morning to you. The community here, a very tight-knit community, one of the largest Asian communities in America, is reeling and in shock after that deadly shooting that happened overnight at this dance studio here. The suspect, a 72-year-old man, which is unusual in many senses, ended up taking his own life after a statewide manhunt. But the big question is, what was the motive? What led this suspect to commit such a horrific act of violence on the eve of Lunar New Year, which is, you can still see the banners and signs to celebrate Lunar New Year. And at this dance studio, police are saying they encountered a horrific scene after several 911 calls. They found 10 dead bodies, at least 10 injured, but several people screaming and trying to get to the exits. And as we know, the suspect is believed to have gone to another dance hall in another neighboring community where he was subdued by patrons there. That led to, as I mentioned earlier, that statewide manhunt where he was eventually spotted in that white van where he ended up taking his own life after a standoff with police. But the big question is, what led this person to do it? And the grief and shock in this community, you can really feel it. Just remember, this is this Asian community that had been the target of hate during the pandemic, and now for over an entire weekend they were concerned that they were a target of this horrific act of violence, as I mentioned earlier. Police are not saying if it's a hate crime, but they are very tight-lipped as to what caused this mass shooting, this latest mass shooting in America, and we're expecting more details later today as this day unfolds. But I can tell you there's supposed to be a vigil tonight here where many people of this tight-knit community are going to be consoling each other and wondering why this happened.
Richard, I know you're just there. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but geographically, the other dance studio where the gunman apparently was going, how far is it from the one you're standing in front of, the scene of all that, the massacre, effectively? How far is that away from there? And there was like this half-hour gap in the timeline.
Yeah, it's about a 20-minute drive or so. We haven't actually mapped it out because we just got on the ground here quite late last night. But, the police say he went to another dance studio, and then he was found in a town sort of on your way to the coast on the other side of LA. So it was obviously in driving distance. But those are one of the many questions as to what motivated this person to do it. And I can tell you, sadly, I've covered several mass shootings here in America, and usually, although every situation is different, typically the shooter is a young male in his teens, 20s, early 30s, motivated by just fueled of rage and hate. For somebody to be 72 years old raises a whole bunch of other questions. And typically, other mass shootings, the suspect typically posts a manifesto of some sort on social media. I can't imagine a 72-year-old be incredibly active on social media posting these manifestos, but those are the questions the police are likely going to be asked today when they give an update. It's just absolutely horrific. And as I mentioned earlier, everywhere you go here, you see Lunar New Year signs, you see banners, you see celebration signs. That, of course, has come to a screeching halt as this community is in just absolute shock, in grief, and are just mourning.
Yeah, what a devastating contrast. And of course, we'll hear the chorus of thoughts and prayers from politicians south of the border. Richard Madden, always appreciate this.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us. Take care.